Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for a preview of the 2024 Roland Garros men's final between Carlos Alcaraz and Alexander Zverev. The winner will be winning Roland Garros for the first time. They are both first-time finalists. Alcaraz goes for slam number 3. Zverev goes for the enormously important slam number 1. Obviously, as you can tell by now, no Zverev versus Ruud post-match. I could have done one. Would have been about 6 minutes long, and I thought it would be a better idea to just start with that in this preview since I haven't covered it. So real quick on Zverev versus Ruud, which for the second year in a row was a very unfortunate, forgettable semifinal with one player compromised, which was Casper Ruud due to a stomach issue. Now, in the first set, Casper looked really, really good. His forehand was at the peak of its powers. He was hitting some really great backhands down the line, which is, of course, a key for Ruud always, but even more so when he's playing Zverev. And movement-wise, he looked like lightning around the court. He was absorbing everything, even with Zverev hitting pretty big, really from the start of this match, which is something that he would continue. But the one thing about the first set is Zverev missed a ton of first serves and a ton of backhands. And if there's one thing Zverev just never does, it's miss a ton of first serves and a ton of backhands. So after the opening set, I was thinking, okay, as good as Ruud looked, that set probably didn't tell us much about how the rest of the match is going to play out, because there is no way that for 2 more sets, Sasha is going to play that poorly on what are usually his 2 greatest strengths. But unfortunately, Ruud did start to slow down after that opening set because of the physical issue. Anyways, Zverev did start to play really commanding on those backhand and backhand exchanges. Ruud's backhand down the line fell off. Zverev started timing his. And, the height and the spin on Ruud's cross-court backhand, which is, by the way, like the spinniest backhand on tour, I think, among two-handers. I don't know if he beats Gasquet in the spin department, but there's definitely no two-hander who hits with more topspin than Casper Ruud. And that protects his backhand. Even if he's hitting it at a lower speed, because of the way the ball jumps off the court, it's more difficult for opponents to attack. And when Ruud hits his backhand cross court, he relies on that topspin to be effective, not only so that he can stay protected, but also so he could look it for a forehand on the next ball. But against Zverev, as we've talked about on multiple occasions in analyzing Zverev's matches in this tournament alone, including just discussing the effect of Nadal's cross-court forehand, when it goes into that backhand, it's the strike zone for Zverev is so high, and he's 6'6", but even if you get it shoulder level, it doesn't matter. So you just can't make any progress there. And it was the same as what it looked like against Nadal's cross-court forehand, where Zverev's backhand, he started hammering it down the line off of balls that nobody could really do that with. It's way better against Zverev to keep it low because he can't get it high, but Ruud doesn't really do that. It's better to be like Daniil Medvedev and hit your backhand flat as a pancake versus being Ruud. Ruud's serve strategy was also neutralized by Zverev's backhand, especially on the ad side, because Ruud on clay especially, he uses this extreme wide serve position. So he stands in his backhand corner almost when he serves, which is really smart against most opponents, because you essentially just can't get it to Ruud's backhand. Like he's going to hit a forehand on the +1 every time unless you hit an exceptional return. And I think the number is 90%. Ruud hits a first ball forehand off of his serves, but that might be off of both sides, which means on the ad side, it's probably like 95%. Anyway, again, Zverev can crush backhand down the line returns from his deep backhand corner, and he can also sting the ball cross court with the kind of pace that might actually be successful in getting it to Ruud's backhand. So I think Casper was hitting way more first ball backhands than he normally would. And ultimately, it's like Ruud's serve strategy goes to Zverev's stronger return. It's probably better to serve Zverev's forehand, but when you're standing all the way out wide and you try to serve T, it ends up not being a very effective serve because it's moving right into Zverev's forehand. So, Zverev's forehand return isn't so bad that he's going to miss easy serves that are going right into his strike zone. Zverev's serve, it turned on. Last two sets were incredible from Sasha on his serve. He served 80%. Ruud couldn't apply any pressure on the return. The 1 through 4 serve points by Zverev, so serve points between 1 and 4 shots, he won 45-5, and 4 points were double faults. So essentially, Zverev got tons of free points and never missed a +1 ball. And Ruud was never able to force an error off the return. The big question, though, was would Zverev return to his confident ball striking? Would it look again like it looked against Nadal in the first round? Would it look like it did in Rome, where the forehand was coming off big and aggressive and he was accelerating through it and he was flattening it out? And the answer is yes. I thought Zverev hit the ball probably the best that he has in this match since his first round match. I think so. So that's a real positive for Zverev coming into this final. But the one thing I will say is there was another display of second serve nerves in the third set in a big 30-all. Actually, he was up 30-15, and he was trying to close out the set at 5-4, and he hit 2 ugly double faults in a row. When I say ugly, I mean he didn't miss by an inch. He didn't serve at his normal speed. No, the arm just got paralyzed, and he hit slow second serves halfway up the net. That's what I'm talking about. So that happened again. Let's go to the preview. Carlos Alcaraz versus Alexander Zverev. Head-to-head is 5-4. It is a weird one. Zverev got 2 wins when Alcaraz was quite underdeveloped, outside the top 30. Both of those matches were in 2021. So I kind of like to throw those out if we're looking at, okay, how have they really stacked up when they're on more even footing as far as how good they are as overall tennis players. And at that time, Zverev was just a far better player. And then, it starts to look more favorable for Alcaraz. Perhaps, you look at that as a 4-3 edge. And the way Alcaraz has won all 4 times against Zverev have been blowouts, like obliterations, honestly. None of them have been close at all. But it's crazy to look at that. You have 2 straightforward wins over a player. But then the other 3 matches, Zverev won. Alcaraz lost. Zverev has also wins at 2 slams, including the Australian Open this year. So, I don't know what my big takeaway is on their head-to-head, to be completely honest. Big picture, I just think it's been very strange. You can look at last year where Zverev had, a scheduling issue in Madrid a couple of years ago, and then last year maybe he wasn't at his best yet. What about Indian Wells this year? There's no real good explanation for why Zverev couldn't be competitive in that one. But then again, you have Zverev also beating Alcaraz on multiple occasions, including in big matches. So let's get into kind of what went down in those matches on both ways. We'll start with Alcaraz. So first off, there were some really bad tactical mistakes that Alcaraz made in Australia. His approach to the match for me was way off in a multitude of ways. I'll talk about some of those ways. Now, I'm assuming he corrected many of these things when they played at Indian Wells earlier this year. But that was the week I was calling the Phoenix Challenger, never got to catch that match on replay. So full disclosure, I didn't see that one. But in Australia, Alcaraz was playing with far too much straight line pace that Zverev was really enjoying just redirecting. Every ball coming in hard at a comfortable height, and Sasha was meeting it with his own baseline power. So Alcaraz just needed to mix it up more. He needed to play with more variety. And not only that, he needed to direct that variety at Zverev's forehand, because at the Australian Open, he played like he had no idea who was on the other side of the net as far as his baseline directionals. And, I do think that comes down to Alcaraz's confidence. That's a nice way to put it. Hubris, that's maybe a more negative way to put it, but maybe more accurate, because, I saw Federer used to do the same thing all the time, where sometimes he'd play an opponent who had kind of a strength and a weakness, but they're so confident in their own games and how they play and what they can do with, their magical abilities, that they basically just ignore the other side of the net and back their own games. It's better to swallow the ego. And for Alcaraz, that means fearing Zverev's backhand a little bit. And directing variety into his forehand, that means high loopy balls off of both wings, just like he was trying to execute against Sinner. That means some backhand slice down the line at Zverev's forehand. Now, we always talk about getting the ball low using the backhand slice, but how do you get the ball low when you're hitting a forehand? You hit the short angle. You try to roll the ball short in the court and get some good angle on it, and I think that's a really good play against Zverev, to make him hit up on the forehand. If you're going to make him generate pace from low contact points, that is where you make him lift, you make him hit that higher bouncing ball that isn't as penetrating. That's the ball you can attack. That is really the goal here, because hitting variety at Zverev, it's not going to make him, it might make him miss, but really what it's going to do is it's going to give you balls to attack. Whereas hitting the ball in a straight line with a lot of pace at his backhand, you're never going to get anything to attack. Good luck getting something short. Good luck getting him to miss. Good luck getting him to drop the pace off. None of those things are going to happen. You want to make Zverev make his own pace and hit from either down low or up high. Now, those are the adjustments, or some of the adjustments, that I think Alcaraz will need to make from the Australian Open match. Again, maybe he already made them at Indian Wells, but you kind of get where I'm coming from there. Then there are things in this head-to-head that I think have consistently worked extremely well for Alcaraz that he'll want to repeat. One being that Zverev leaves the drop shot open because he likes to retreat far behind the baseline. And I'm thinking about their Madrid matchups in particular, where Alcaraz just feasted off of drop shot success, taking advantage of anything short off of both wings by frequently using the dropper. I also think that Alcaraz's deep return position on the first serve is very effective against Zverev's serve style, a style that brings S-tier pace, S-tier percentage, but just average spot serving. Now, what Zverev will want to do to counter that against a deep return position is to try to hit those sharper out-wide angles, but it's not Zverev's strength. And if you look at Zverev's career ace rate, it's 10.5%. But when he has played Alcaraz in every match after 2021, so you take away the two matches when Carlitos was a little baby, if you take away 2021, Zverev has been under 8% ace rate in every match except for Turin, which is the fastest court on the entire tour. Under 8% in every match, even though Zverev's ace rate is 10.5%. I also really like the block return option for Alcaraz. Zverev is known as a big hitter, but it's just like what we talked about with the baseline variety. He's a big hitter when he has pace to work with. He is not a great pace generator if you take all the pace off the ball, if you deaden that ball. So Alcaraz, from a deep return position, is also going to be in good defensive position, getting into the center of the court for his split step and giving Zverev a ball that he doesn't have a lot of pace to work with. I feel like that's a great way for Alcaraz to get in the point on Zverev's first serve. Off the second serve, it's also an area where at times Alcaraz has had a ton of success against Zverev. And certainly at the U.S. Open last year, it was actually from standing really, really close and taking a lot of time away and just jumping on Zverev, making him hit the big second serve. Because when you stand deep, Zverev is comfortable just rolling the second serve in and starting the point. But if you stand up on the baseline and attack Sasha, that's where he starts to get uncomfortable. And he starts to go big on the second serve, and you can get some double faults. I'm going to be curious to see where Alcaraz stands on the second return, but my bet is that over the course of the entire match, we'll see multiple return positions from Alcaraz. Let's move on to Zverev now. Where has Zverev had success against Alcaraz in his wins? Well, the biggest thing is he is way more steady. He misses from neutral far less than Alcaraz. If you take their semifinal matches, just as an example, little microcosm, there was one set that Alcaraz played against Sinner where he made 9 unforced errors. That was set 4. That was his lowest total. The other 4 sets were double-digit unforced errors. Zverev played 4 sets against Ruud. He never ventured into double-digit unforced errors, and there were 2 sets in there where he made 4 unforced errors. So Zverev is the kind of player where you might go an entire set and barely get any mistakes from him, any easy mistakes. You might get 2, 3, 4, which feels like nothing over the course of a set, where Alcaraz is not really going to bring that to the table. Now, I talked about that being an advantage for Sinner, so let's just address that part of it, because I thought Sinner would have that advantage, and obviously, if you look at the numbers, the unforced errors numbers, Sinner did have that advantage. However, I don't think Sinner was moving well enough to stay in the points and really take full advantage of being the steadier player because he wasn't able to extend rallies with his defense. I believe Zverev is going to move and defend much better than Sinner did. I think Alcaraz is going to face a stiffer test in that department, not because Zverev is generally a better mover and a defender than Sinner, but because Jannik seemed to be a little bit off in that department after the first set. And I don't know if that was because of fatigue, because of slippery clay, or because of the hip and his preparation, a combination of that being weaker or whatever. I don't know which of those 3 things it was. I'm kind of leaning fatigue. I don't know. And slippery clay. But maybe all 3. I don't know. Point is, I think Zverev's going to move better, and that's going to help him actually flesh out any advantage that he may have in terms of his ability to play long rallies without missing, play a lot of balls without missing, which he does better than Alcaraz. There's also, of course, the serve-return dynamic, which is another form of putting more balls in play when you think about it, which is that, Zverev against Alcaraz's serve is very likely to hit a lot of clean, deep, neutralizing returns. Now, there's a big range in Alcaraz's serve. Like, sometimes he can serve better than expected, really, really well. But I'd say if Alcaraz has an average serving day, Zverev will have no problem making a lot of returns. Of course, on the Zverev end, he is going to serve a high percentage of first serves at an extreme pace, and that's going to result in a lot of service winners, likely. And that puts a lot of pressure on Alcaraz to outplay Zverev off the ground from the back of the court. Pretty simple stuff. I won't go further than that. I mean, the serve-return dynamic inherently does favor Zverev, although I do think there are things that Alcaraz can do to mitigate it, and the way that Alcaraz really draws even in this department is by being more deadly on the +1 than Zverev is on his +1. Therefore, for Zverev to win the short points, he does need to win the battle of unreturned serves, or the battle of cheap points. Otherwise, Alcaraz could actually build an advantage in those short bang-bang rallies. Last thing is backhand to backhand. It does feel like Zverev, in the matches that he's beat Alcaraz in, particularly the 2 slam matches, Australian Open and Roland Garros last year, where Zverev has had that cross-court on lock, and he has rushed and overwhelmed Alcaraz with the stability, the depth, the pace. He's more solid off of the backhand, and I think both players are equally as dangerous. Will be interesting because Alcaraz hit his backhand, has been hitting his backhand, I think, extremely well, but Zverev usually wins that cross court when he's having any semblance of success against Alcaraz. Physically, I think both will be perfectly ready to go 5 sets. No advantage physically, in my opinion. I'm calling that a tie. And now let's get to the mental. Now, before this tournament, I picked Zverev to make the final because I felt he was playing great tennis. I picked him to lose in the final because I don't trust his ability to play his best in these kinds of matches. And it's not just about US Open 2020. US Open 2020 was bad, and that is a source of deep scar tissue heading into this match. Don't get me wrong. So it's a factor, but that's not the only thing. It would be unfair on my end if I looked at just one match in his entire career and made judgments about his ability to win a slam final based on one match. That would be totally unfair, and it's not where I'm coming from. But I've been watching Zverev for 6 years now, and I've seen patches of poor nerve management in tight scoreboard situations on a regular basis. It's been a constant, and it's even popped up during this tournament, whether it be tight second serves, tight forehands, or an overall kind of passivity in his play. Alcaraz has not been perfect at dealing with pressure in his career either, but that's manifested itself in longer-term dips in form. It has not manifested itself in scoreboard-related faux pas, especially when Carlitos is feeling confident. When he's going right, Alcaraz, he's a fantastic big match player. He is 14-4 in his career in finals, 2-0 in major finals. He's got the 5-set confidence factor, being 9-1 in his career in 5th sets. He's got a great tie-break record in his career of 61-38. And Zverev's is also excellent, but it's not quite that good. The biggest mental factor of it all, though, is the 2-slam advantage for Alcaraz. I mean, the toughest one to get is your first. There's no doubt about it. And usually I'd say the favorite in the match has the pressure in a major final. And that's Alcaraz. Like, Alcaraz is the favorite to win the match, but somehow, does it feel at all like there's more pressure on Alcaraz? Not to me. Feels like there's way more pressure on Zverev because he is, as of now, one of the best players, if not the best player of all time, who has never won a slam. And he hasn't even gotten himself in these positions often enough because he hasn't done a great job of beating elite players at slams in best of 5, not nearly as well as he's done this very same thing in best of 3 set events. Even at events like the Olympics and Masters 1000 and the year-end championships, just hasn't been quite the same at majors for some reason. So he has that scar tissue. He doesn't have that comfort factor of having already done this before. And that's where Alcaraz has the clear mental edge on top of everything else when it comes to Zverev's history. Prediction. These are 2 players who can show a wide range of levels, and that does make it somewhat difficult to know what to expect coming into this match. I think skill-wise, they are close to even at their best, which might sound weird considering just how spectacular Alcaraz is in all areas of the game, but you have to remember how unplayable Zverev's serve can be. So I would give Zverev that title of having the ability, even when Alcaraz is, at a high level, to be in his zone, to match him. Now, obviously, you can tell I favor Alcaraz mentally, and I've already said as much. And it's, to me, the 5-4 30-all short ball test. 5-4 30-all. You have a cross-court forehand from your opponent that lands a little short in the court. Are you willing to gun it? Are you going to hit a great, aggressive down the line that is going to tilt the point in your favor, and are you going to finish? Or are you going to trade it back cross-court with some level of passivity? that's where I just trust Alcaraz a whole lot more. Another factor I want to mention is Ferrero. He wasn't there to keep him on track in Australia, and Alcaraz, tactically speaking, drifted way off track. This should be different. He has Juan Carlos Ferrero there. So I feel like if Alcaraz executes good tactics, plays cleaner than he did against Sinner, because he does need to just tighten things up a little bit against Zverev, who, again, I think will defend better and make more balls. I think the blueprint is there for Carlos Alcaraz to use his offensive arsenal, to play bolder and more aggressive in the big moments, to make return of serves with a deep return position, potentially a block return. And my pick is Carlos Alcaraz in 4. Hope you enjoy the final, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time.